Hey guys, this is Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship, and I'm here with my good friend and advantage player, JCnote. JCnote, thanks for doing this interview with us.
Yeah, good to be here.
So if you are a member and you've listened to some of our roundtable discussions, JCnote's been willing to be a part of a handful of those, and you get some of his insights on different aspects of card counting and advantage play. But I've been trying to do an interview with JCnote for over a year, I think.
At least.
And just, something different has come up every time we've had it scheduled. And I finally kidnapped him, locked him in a room, and said he couldn't leave until we had this recorded. So thanks for doing this. And, just a little bit of info. I met JCnote at a boot camp, I think 6 years ago. And he has gone on to primarily provide for his family over, I'd say, most of those 6 years through card counting and more recently other forms of advantage play. And he's also become a good friend of mine over these years. Fortunately, he lives in my neck of the woods. So without any further ado, let's get into the interview.
Rock on.
Awesome. So my first question for you is, how did you get interested in card counting?
Well, Colin Jones, that was Holy Rollers. So, this was going on 6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago in May.
Okay.
I just sat down with my wife for an evening of television, and we're like, card counting Christians. That looks interesting. Let's do it. And from that moment on, I was just hooked. Like, I could not get enough of Blackjack. So
was that through? So a couple things. Holy Rollers, for those that don't know, that's a documentary that my oldest friend Brian filmed during kind of the height of the church team, which was the team that I co-managed and then managed on my own for the last year of it. And so, there's this documentary out there. And was it on Netflix at the time?
It was, yeah.
Okay. So, there was like a 3-year Netflix deal that my buddy Brian worked out with them. And it's funny, he actually just stayed with me the last 2 nights. Oh, cool. He and his wife and their kids. He lives in LA now and makes documentaries and whatnot. But he was saying, like, I should contact them again and see if we can get that thing up there. But for a while, people would find us through Netflix through that documentary, and you were one of those fortunate or unfortunate souls.
Well, thank Brian.
So, what do you think actually gravitated you towards card counting when you saw the documentary? You say you were hooked. Well, why?
Yeah, I think it was just the normal everyday people aspect of it.
Okay.
Because I thought about it later, some years after becoming an advantage player and after hearing a lot of people say, like, oh, I watched the movie 21 and then I, was totally in for it. And I thought about that and I'm like, well, I saw the movie 21 when it came out, in 2008. I didn't see it in theaters, but I rented it or whatever. I was in college at the time, and I didn't have anywhere near the same reaction, and I think it was just because it was just Hollywood over the top. I just assumed that, like, everything in it was fake and, like, that you still had to be Rain Man to do it, or I just never paid it any thought,
Yeah.
But Holy Rollers was totally different. It was just like, oh my gosh, this is like real people on a real team. And, the numbers also play a role. Like, you guys were pulling down some pretty big numbers, which was pretty attractive. But, I think it was just that it was a documentary rather than a movie.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know Joe748, our mutual friend and card counter, he had a similar... I think he saw 21, and then he Googled it and saw that back in the day, Ben and I had made a video that were like the top 10 mistakes in 21 the movie, and he was like, oh, who are these guys? And then he found Holy Rollers, and he said when he saw that, he was like, oh, I could do this.
Right.
Because before, it's like, well, there are these, if people don't know they think, oh, well, MIT geniuses. And then they see Ben and I, and we, if you don't know us, you assume, oh, well, they must be, geniuses. We're pretty normal dudes.
Right.
But when you see Holy Rollers, you see it is, former electricians and writers and baristas and housewives.
You see Mark on there, like, painting a house, and you're just like, oh, geez, like, okay.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I like mostly knew that part of your story, but I guess I didn't know. I thought it was perhaps through something else. But anyway, had you played blackjack or even been in a casino before? You were hooked through Holy Rollers.
Nope, I had never. I don't even know if I had ever set foot in a casino. I'm pretty sure I hadn't.
Yeah.
I think later that year I did go to a casino with a friend of mine, just recreationally. He was a big craps player, and by big craps player, I mean he brings $100. And,
oh, wow.
and turns it into 200 and has a free buffet. But that was my first exposure to casinos. Or obviously I drove by them, growing up or whatever, but never thought about really going in, or never bought lotto tickets or did any kind of gambling until I knew it could be beaten. So
I remember. I was probably 21 years old, and some of my friends were part of this like car club where they'd get together with other people that had similar, souped up cars. It was like some friends from high school, and they invited me to come hang out for this like car club thing. And I didn't have a cool car, but they were my buddies. So like, hey, why don't you come, And so we ride around in their fancy cars, and they take pictures and like brag about their cars. But then they're like, hey, we're going to go to the casino and gamble. And I'm like, I'm out of here. Like there's no way I'm going into and you know what? 2 years later, I'm in casinos full time gambling. But it sounds like we got the same backstory.
Yeah.
Same hero's journey.
Right.
So, okay, you see Holy Rollers. Everything changes for you. Yeah. You're hooked. What did your training look like at that point?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think at the end of Holy Rollers, they talk about Blackjack Apprenticeship, or at least allude to it or something. And so I went online, obviously, and found you guys pretty quickly. I don't know if I Googled it or if it was, like, Googled Holy Roller. I don't know what I did. I probably Googled your guys' names and found Blackjack Apprenticeship. And I probably spent a couple of weeks just going through the free content, download Basic Strategy, I had a copy of Basic Strategy in my wallet, and I would take it to work with me and, try to memorize it on my breaks and on car trips, or if I was on a car trip with my wife, I would have her like test me on it and
that's cool.
See if I have it memorized and that kind of thing. So it started out that way. Within a few weeks, I had bought a membership and had started going through the video course, and I mean that's how it started. It was practicing at home. I don't think I bought one of the kits from the site, but I couldn't wait. I just went to Fred Meyer and bought some, cards and chips and stuff like that, and quickly realized that the chips weren't really that useful in the beginning. I was like trying to keep track of like, okay, how many chips have I won? And I was just trying to trying to like see if it's working. And
completely pointless.
Right. And then I think we didn't have drills at the time.
No, I don't think the website had any drills.
Yeah, but I think in an email or something you had suggested a website at the time. It was like blackjack-drills.com or something like that. And so while that site was still working, I was, using that for Basic Strategy and, counting down decks at home and dealing to myself and that kind of stuff. And then I registered for a boot camp. I want to say, I think it was 6 months later that I went to a boot camp. So it was May when I watched the documentary, and I went to a September boot camp. So
awesome! I remember that boot camp. I remember you there, and I actually just pulled up the first email you sent back in.
No way.
Yeah. Back in.
Was I wide-eyed and?
Oh yeah. I mean, I get a lot of emails from people that are new and excited about card counting, and it's really easy to kind of like take them with a grain of salt.
Right.
But the reality is, everybody that's now like a BJA Pro, and a friend of mine had that initial situation. So I'm trying to give it a little more thought, because I'll get one of those emails now. Right. I'll be like, maybe this will be the next JCnote or the next JCnote or the next Spartan or whatever.
Yeah.
I remember you came to the boot camp. I also remember we had a series of emails, I think even some phone calls leading up to the boot camp.
Right.
You had a lot of questions, and I think I was helping you train with the iPhone app and some of that stuff. But you came to the boot camp, and from there, we actually did some private training.
Right. Yeah. So, after the boot camp, I had a pretty good idea of like what I needed to practice or whatever, but felt like, if I'm going to put real money behind this, like I want to know that I have the edge, without waiting to get the hours in. I'm actually probably I'm probably more risk averse than like any of my other AP friends. Like you'll talk to the Phoenix or JCnote or those guys. I mean, those guys have a stomach for risk that I just don't have.
And interestingly, they both kind of went for it.
Yeah.
And just went for it with $5,000 or whatever, right. And then things weren't going well, and that's when they came to boot camp. Whereas you went probably more the route I would have gone, which is like invest in the training first. But you also had a little bit more to start with a bankroll than I would say.
Yeah, I remember after the boot camp, like the bankroll coaching you did for me was based on $5,000 bankroll.
Oh, okay.
But I think that was as much as I was willing to commit at the time.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I mentally had a $5,000 bankroll in the bank, but like I pulled out $500 from an ATM and never looked back.
Dude, love it. I tell people I started with $2,000. I don't think I bought in more than the first $500. Yeah.
Now, with a caveat, I did add money to my bankroll, like as it grew and I wanted to bet more or whatever. I did like add money to it. So, but I never, like from my winnings, I never dipped below that original 500. So,
well, you and I got lucky. I know JCnote lost his first $5,000 and had to, it didn't deter him.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. If I would have lost my first $2,000, I think I would have gotten cold feet and I'd be actuary right now or something else.
Right.
But so I thought I remembered that maybe it was after you started winning you added more money to it. But I feel like I remember you having like $20,000 or something with pretty early on.
Yeah,
maybe that was.
Well, I teamed up pretty early on with some. I think at the point that I teamed up, my bankroll was up to like 16,000.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think like 10 of that was winnings.
Oh man, I love it.
Yeah. So I had started with this mental 5K bankroll, and then I think I ran that up to like 3,000 within a few weeks, and then
3,000 of profits.
3,000, of profit, and then over like 1 week, I just dumped and I lost like 1,500. I know it's like tiny numbers, but to me it was just like, oh my gosh, I lost half of my profit. It was just like, and that was kind of a getting real moment of realizing, oh, this is what risk of ruin means. Yeah. So. But I ran it up fairly quickly, just playing part-time. I was still working at the time. But when I actually went full-time, when I teamed up with another player, and we had about 20 to 24,000 was kind of our...
But backing up a little bit, before that, we did some private training, because I remember it was important for you to know that you would have passed a church team test out.
Right.
And that happened. I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember the casino. I remember the session. And I mean, was that easier or harder than you thought it was going to be to test out?
I think at the time it was, I kind of had those like boot camp nerves where, people come in and they're just like really nervous about like, I need to pass, so I had a little bit of that going on, but I had so much practice at that point that I think I was more concerned about like that we got our wires crossed or something. Like you had asked me to count, and like I didn't raise my bet at a certain point, but I think it was because I don't know, it was because of some kind of like miscommunication between the two of us.
Okay.
And so like in that moment I was like, oh, damn it, you know. But like, I mean, I passed, and that gave me enough of a, you know, confidence in going forward. Although up until that point, you know, you can kind of pretty much know in your training when you're not really making any mistakes anymore. So I kind of knew I was already kind of to that point. So it was kind of just the formality of like, you know, I'm putting real money behind this, because Colin said I'm safe to do so. Not because,
oh boy,
you know,
it's a lot of pressure on me.
So my success is all your fault.
Man, if you would have had negative variance right at the beginning, it would have been
Colin, what did you teach me?
Gosh, that would have been stressful. But fortunately, the sky was the limit, at least initially.
Right.
And so you teamed up with someone. You guys played on a 2-man team for a while, 6 months.
About 6 months, I think, maybe a little bit longer. Yeah, well, that's. I should also back up. That was also a big catalyst to my training. Was like I had started finding people close to me that were also learning.
Yeah.
And as I dealt to them initially, I realized like, wow, I'm like way ahead of like where these guys are at.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, okay, so I'm really making progress. And like when you have to deal to someone else and like teach it to someone else, it kind of really catapulted my training.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're listening to this and you're training and you have someone that you can train as well, you know, it can really help solidify, you know, when you have to explain it to someone else, or when you have to correct someone else, or even be thinking ahead of if they have a deviation decision or whatever, it can really solidify all this stuff. We always mention that at boot camp.
Yeah. And just someone like kind of pushing you like, oh, I'm ahead of him now, but like, oh, he's catching up. Like, you know, I really got to stay sharp. So.
Yeah. So on the topic of deviations, what's your favorite blackjack deviation?
Favorite blackjack deviation? That's a good question. Probably the deviations that get the most like who farted looks from the table. I don't really split tens a lot anymore, you know, out of just a choice. But like, man, I really like soft 19 against a 6.
Yeah.
Because usually the dealer will try to just blow past you, and you're just like, nope, double it, and you're like, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that?
Yeah, I'm kind of partial to soft 20 against 4, 5, or 6. Just it feels safer than splitting 10s, but you still get to get double the money out there, and you either look like a total buffoon or you look pretty awesome when you do it.
My favorite is the one I learned from The Hangover, splitting 5s.
Wow, you must need a really low count. No. Oh, man, I cannot think of... That's funny. So he splits 5s in The Hangover.
Yeah, you don't remember that scene?
Jeez.
Yeah,
that's bad.
Pit boss or the dealer calls back. He's like, splitting 5s.
That's funny. Gosh.
Yeah.
I did catch, because you pointed out in the... whatever that like bio of Tommy Highland, and the busts the 30.
Oh, yeah.
The dealer,
hard 30.
The dealer has 2 10s and hits it for a 30.
Right.
Oh goodness. All right, we're getting off topic here. More importantly, let's talk about the Slingo side bet.
Okay.
So you're teaming up with another guy, and how did I feel like maybe you were asking me about some of these. Where to find some of these other things, and I had just interviewed Richard Munchkin, and he tells me like, oh yeah, there are these mathematicians that are posting it online. Some of these games. Is that kind of how that originated?
Yeah, I had gone to a couple of those websites, and it was actually my teammate. I mean, we weren't officially teamed up at the time, but he had kind of perused the site because I had showed it to him, and then he tracked it down. He like found out where the casino was that had one of these things that was published.
Yeah.
AKA the Slingo side bet, which I don't think is there anymore, but it might be. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it's not. But yeah, he just tracked it down and went to the casino and saw, yep, it's on the felt, it's there, and so we learned the special count strategy to take advantage of it. And
so, for those that don't know, card counting is like there's more than just okay. For the church team, 99% of what we did was card counting, like you see in 21 or you read about in books, but every once in a while you find other opportunities out there. I guess for JCnote, it's not just every once in a while, but we read about this side bet, and you had to learn a different count. It wasn't high-low. It had a unique count for different parts of the side bet. But what was the edge like for I feel like for the ace.
I don't remember the edge, but the way they published it on the blog was that it returned like it was like 5 units per 100 bet or something like that.
Wow.
It was pretty ridiculous.
I want to say it was something like 18%,
something
edge.
Like that. It was double digits. For
it was
sure,
it was a $5 max though. That was the problem. $10 max. Yeah. Okay, and I remember you guys say, "Hey, we found this thing," and I'm like, "Dude, like this sounds really fun." Learning a different count, crushing some side bet,
and then Colin asked to join my team.
Yep, that's right. I'm like, "Can I, be on your team?"
Actually, truth be told, that was the first team I ever played on.
That was the first team play. All right. Yeah. Well, that was I think the last team I played on.
Right. Nice.
But we hardly needed any bankroll for it because it was such huge EV.
I think we put together like $6,000.
Yeah, something. It was like we threw some money in.
Yeah, we each put up like $2,000 or something. And yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, it was basically making like $100 an hour on $10 bets.
Yep.
So,
and to me, it was perfect because I could play unrated at those limits. Mm-hmm. I thought I was able to for a while, and it just felt like a fun $100 an hour. Gosh, who's going to pass up $100 an hour for something that felt that easy? Right. But also had the challenge of a new count and some of that stuff, and so you guys played it for a few weekends. I played it for a weekend. I caught the negative variance, and I tested myself out. So I trust my counting on this game. It was basic strategy at the side bet, but I just I couldn't win, but you guys couldn't lose.
Yeah. It was crazy. We were when you called and told us that you had lost. We're just like,
how?
I don't know if we trust this Colin guy.
I remember I felt bad being the loser, but I'd been through it before on both ends of it. Being the winner of the bankroll and the loser, but anyway, then me and this third person, mm-hmm. We were playing kind of like together because we could each do a different count for it, and and someone just recognized me. Someone in surveillance recognized me, and I get they come up to me. I had been playing unrated the whole time, and they say, "Colin, you're not welcome to play here anymore." And I'm like, "Oh crap! Not only is this up, which isn't a big deal, but now this poor kid is like right. connected with me." But they didn't. I don't think they had his ID either. I don't know. Maybe they did.
No.
Good.
He didn't give it up. Yeah.
Good. Well, I want to bring that up because it's kind of a fun story, but it's also a little bit of a segue into that. You can't. How long were you primarily counting cards?
Probably first couple of years. I don't think I really started segueing into more other stuff until like 2014 or 15.
So 2-3 years it was.
Yeah, 2-3 years of counting.
And how did it go in general?
Good. I mean, I'm up.
Yeah. But you actually were a part of another team, and you learned some other things. Yeah.
So after I had played like 6 or 7 months with just me and my buddy. We both joined another team, which they had been putting out feelers or whatever to recruit kind of this big team format where there's multiple players across the whole country, and it was going to be this big kind of MIT reboot sort of a thing. And I was feeling like, man, I'm scraping by on this like really small bankroll, and it'd be nice to like not have to have all the answers and just kind of like plug into somebody else managing a team and just like go out there and just be a foot soldier. But so yeah, I joined that team because it had a lot of appeal to, even just for camaraderie and networking and that kind of thing. Which is primarily why I like playing on teams, is just the, other people aspect of it. And I joined up with them. And I played with them for about 6 months. I think it was about 6 months. And I just decided to leave the team because I kind of disagreed with some of the management decisions. And I was like the third largest investor on the team at the time, and I felt like I didn't really have a lot of say in what was going on. Even though I had a lot of the risk of what's going on. So I decided to part ways. But
and that's where you met the Phoenix.
Yep. That's where we met.
And so you met the Phoenix on that team, and I know he parted ways a little not long after you.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 months later.
But through this team, you got exposed to some other opportunities.
Yeah, there were some other guys on the team who had really taken to other forms of advantage play, and that stuff was always really interesting to me. And so I tried to play with them some more, and after the big team, finally dissolved for good, and the manager actually disbanded the team. These other guys that were into the other plays, they had kind of teamed up with each other and had started really finding this stuff.
And simultaneously, you were playing on your own.
Yeah, I was playing on my own, and for a brief time, teamed up with the Phoenix as well. Somewhere in there, I forget the sequence. I think I kind of started doing trips with these other guys from the old team, and didn't officially join their team until probably a year or two later. So, yeah.
So you met them. They were doing some more advanced AP plays. What made you interested in the more advanced AP stuff? Was it just wanting to team up with those guys, or was it something about the hole carding and whatnot that intrigued you?
It was a combination of things. I mean, those guys of the people on that big team I was a part of, they seemed to be the sharpest, and they were the ones that I never really questioned their skill and things like that. And they tend to be they just had kind of an inquisitive mindset about it, of like, oh, this stuff is out here, let's like try to figure it out, And so I liked them as just like people to team up with, and they happened to be doing kind of these other things, I think that was probably the primary motivators.
Awesome. So Joe 748 has a few questions for you. Now that we're at this point in the interview. He wants to know a detailed top points, pros and cons of blackjack versus hole carding. I think what it means is card counting versus hole carding.
Right.
So you've done both very extensively. You've made money at both. What would you say are kind of the top pros and cons?
Yeah, so I'll get this one out of the way first, is that I personally, now I'm not speaking for anybody on my team per se, but like I personally don't think that hole carders or advanced APs or whatever you call it, I don't think that they necessarily make any more money than a card counter does or could. In fact, if I add up, most of the card counters I know have probably made more career-wise than probably most of the hole cutters I know, but I don't know everybody, but
it's because we card counters, we're like cockroaches.
Right.
We're bottom dwellers, but you can't get rid of us.
Yeah, so I would say like there's a lot of people who approach me about other plays because they think that there's more money there. And there could be, but it usually comes down to the same factors that make a successful card counter. Like how much time are you willing to put in? Like how much work are you willing to do? There's a lot more strategies to learn. There's a lot more things to learn. And, it just comes down to the same things that make a card counter, good. So pros and cons, I would say, on the card counter side, a big pro would be that you can just go anywhere and start generating EV.
Yeah, almost anywhere.
Sure, yeah.
There's beatable games in
and not all
30-some states and even some other countries.
Right, and not all games are created equal, albeit, but you don't have to do a lot of poking around to find a game to play.
Yeah.
If you're looking for whole cards or generally just anything other than card counting that yields an advantage, there's a lot more scouting work. Like you have to go and look for stuff. So your negative variance comes in the form of, I just looked at 30 casinos and there's nothing, you know? So, that's a big negative, especially for someone who's eager to get out there and just start making money. At least with card counting, like you're putting bets on the table. Well, the EV clock is ticking, so that's a major pro on the card counting side. Some pros on the advanced side, there's generally less scrutiny. When you do find an opportunity that's exploitable, there are fewer casino personnel out there who are looking for that. Now, there still are. And never underestimate the stupidity of casinos. I can't tell you how many times I've been doing something in a casino that has nothing to do with card counting and still get backed off because they find me in a database. Oh, this is a known card counter. He must be counting cards even though he's flat betting. So kick him out. So I would say usually that's a big plus on, most people who get into whole carding or advanced plays are generally trying to avoid heat. And it may or may not actually work that way. I think generally you'll get less heat, but it doesn't mean that you're invisible.
Man, I would love at the Blackjack Ball one of these years for there to be a survey and, the first thing is, what do you play? Or what's your play? Card counting or whole carding or machine play or whatever. And then I want to know the total winnings, but also the dollar per hour, and not just hours playing, but the time that goes into it. Because we know, if for my career. I've always said $300 an hour. I looked it up and it's closer to $400 once I started keeping records. So I probably was making $10 an hour. But let's say $300 an hour. Well, there's also hours that go into it that aren't on the clock, record keeping and adding up my money and
travel,
team meetings and whatever. But it would be interesting to know. But Joe, a segue into Joe's second question. What's the average ratio of scouting to table time?
Yeah, I don't know. It really all depends. There was a guy who he taught me a few things about the advanced plays, and he told me that it's 3 to 1.
Okay,
and I can't confirm that or say it's definitely sometimes it's worse than that, sometimes maybe better, but. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I don't know how scientific that is. But I mean, and if you've in your example, if it takes you 3 hours or takes you a ton of time to find a game worth $1,000 an hour or whatever, well then you factor in the 3 to 1. Well, you're right back at your $300 an hour that you were saying a minute ago. So. It's fascinating to me, and I've never gotten a good answer, which I'm kind of okay with, but I'm a little bit fascinated. Same with I asked a bunch of people who wrote a book how long it took, and no one knew. Until Loud and Often, which is perfect because a card counter, he's well, of course I kept track of how many hours it took me, but then no one else knew, and that's fine. You can make money either way, but it is interesting to hear. I'm primarily a card counter, so whatever. Hooray for card counters! But it's interesting to hear.
I think in my mind, oh well, those advanced APs or those hole carders, they make the real money, but it's probably not.
Yeah, and maybe there's guys like Richard Munchkin or I'm sure James Grosjean is making a whole lot more money than I am, but so however that works out, I don't know those guys. I'm a youngish looking white guy, like they stop me all the time, so it's it's just all rolls up into advantage play. And I think I gravitated towards it more because of, like, I always enjoyed, like, getting away with something more than I enjoyed, like, here I am, back me off. You know? So.
Well, and if you've got, like, if you've got a good group of people to be on a team with, gosh, I feel like the people are what make, make the engine run. You got the right people. It could be any sort of engine, Okay, so Joe's final question, Joe748, is what's the difference in the way the variance feels emotionally between hole carding and card counting?
Yeah, man. On the one hand, with card counting, you have the emotional variance of, like, I just lost a ton of money, like, playing the right way.
Yeah.
And honestly, even with hole carding or other advanced stuff, like, it's not immune to variance.
Yeah.
Like, I can remember several sessions where I lost more than I thought possible.
Yeah. And that's got to feel extra. Like, it's one thing when you got a 1% edge and you're getting beat, but when you've got, what are some of the edges that you guys...
I joke with my teammates that, like, card counters have no idea what a Miracle 21 is.
But
it's and it can really suck to, like, walk in and out of 20 casinos and just find nothing worth anything, So, it can be tough on long dry spells of low EV. I would say it's fairly equal. I guess it depends on how much you sweat the money, how much you, how much losing hurts, which is something that you have to kind of become immune to, whether you're doing, card counting or any other kind of advantage play. So
I think to piggyback on that question, a card counter can have a losing streak of 100, even 200 hours. I don't think I know anyone that's had really worse than that, but whatever, a couple hundred hours can happen. But if you're getting your hours in at a more rapid rate, how does that compare to the potential swings with a more advanced stuff? Because you're going to get to the long run faster, except that if you're spending 3 hours scouting for every hour playing, would you say it's about comparable, or?
Well, I think it first and foremost depends on your bankroll, probably. And
I'm sure it depends on the play.
Honestly,
also.
I've felt like in some ways it's almost more frustrating when you're, like, trying to look for advanced stuff, because if you have come off of, like, finding some advanced stuff and then losing money on them.
Yeah.
And so now you're in the hole.
Yeah.
And so now you have to go find another game just to get you back in the black. And there isn't a lot of control over, like, what you find. You know? So, like, you have to deal with, like, not having total control over the hours that you put in. And the same with card counting. Like, you can't control how long you get until you get backed off, but you can always choose to drive to the next place and, start playing.
The lack of control with card counting is just that you can just keep playing and playing and keep losing to a point. And you have the micro wins and loss, winning streaks and losing streaks, but 200 hours, that could take a pro, 6 months or whatever. But I could imagine when you're spending all this time and then you find a juicy game,
and then they just kill you,
and then just getting crushed. It's got to get tough to say, okay, well, got to scout to find another opportunity. So my next question is: do you plan your trips around Dutch Brothers coffee stands, or is that just a bonus?
Are you sure Joe748 didn't ask this one?
No, this is me, but he's probably wondering also.
No. In fact, most places in the country do not have Dutch Bros coffee stands, unfortunately. But when I'm on the West Coast, it's a perk.
Yeah, good. Glad to know that.
Basic strategy is the double chocolate mocha.
Oh, my gosh. I'd probably have to cut that with some extra milk or black coffee or something, but...
It's not on the menu. It's like part of their menu. So this is like...
So it's an advanced play.
Well, it's basic strategy if you were there from the beginning.
Okay.
When it was actually on the menu. Back in, 1990, whatever.
Man, so if you go to Vegas, you've got advanced options both for In-N-Out and Dutch Brothers.
Correct.
That a noob wouldn't be aware of.
Correct.
A ploppy would just be ordering some amateur drink or burger.
Right.
Okay. Less importantly, but still important, I'd like to hear your advice for a card counter who's curious about more advanced plays.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, there's a lot of free resources out there. Even on Wizard of Odds, I think they publish like the whole carding strategy for 3-card poker and, things like that. There's some blogs out there, and people have talked about them on the forum and whatnot, that you can find those pretty easily. But yeah, I would just start reading those things, and then just when you're in a casino, just kind of look around, go to the promotions desk, say like, hey, do you got anything cool going on this month?
Yeah. Grab
the little flyer that has their calendar of stuff going on, and, ask them how their slot club works, like, how many points for dollars in do I get, or, does this apply to this game or that game? Just kind of be curious, ask questions. A lot of like what we do kind of requires some inside knowledge of like, you have to, have been at the casino or actually played or, things like that. And networking is really key with this. It's really hard. You'll notice that, a lot of things I'm saying are somewhat vague. And part of that is just out of respect for my team.
People aren't going to want to network with you if you're spoiling all these, like people know about card counting, and it has to do with the way the game is normally dealt. A lot of stuff you do, some of it has to do with how it's
not normally dealt.
Yeah, much more of it has to do with something out of the ordinary.
Right.
And if you're blabbing about this stuff, like, no one's going to want to network with you.
Right.
And I don't know, like, maybe people think I'm just trying to sell a membership, but I always tell people, like, you gotta like start investing in those relationships. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't just mean like buying a membership, going on the forum and saying, JCnote, tell me everything, It means being someone that people would want to, network with or get to know, or, you have to invest in those relationships. But gosh, like I said before, the people are really the engine that make this stuff work. You can be a card counter or even a whole carder on your own, but I feel like everyone I know has a good support system of other APs. So.
And one thing I'll add to that is that, like, the fastest way to be a bad networker in this world is to be known as a store burner, So, like, if you're getting games corrected, or you're hitting something too hard, or you're playing it in an obvious way, or something that exposes the fact that the casino has a leak, you won't make very many friends.
Yeah. I'll hear a story about one of my, BJA member or pro that's become a friend and that I keep in touch with, and they say like, oh, I was playing this place for 3 days, and then this other guy comes up to me and starts blabbing to me at the table about card count, and I get backed off. I was like, well, I'm sorry, that's awful.
Right. Yeah.
So have some tact, but I'd say in addition to that, look to give. I think most people want to help other people out, but if you're known as someone that's just trying to like get from people, if you don't scratch their back, they're gonna stop scratching you, or they'll have no incentive. But I feel like we as the community have a great opportunity to see everybody succeed, and that doesn't mean you just give up every game to everybody. But and I know Richard Munchkin. He's a good guy, and he wants to see people succeed within the limits of what he's comfortable to share. But don't be looking to just milk people for information, and definitely don't burn the stores.
And it's a totally different conversation when you go up to somebody and say, "Hey, how do I hole card?" than if you go up to them and say, "Hey, I was in a casino and I saw this person exposing a hole card, and it was on this shift, and this is their name, and it's at this casino."
Yeah, that'll
probably get you a little further than just like, I want to be an advanced AP.
Yeah, totally. So I'd like to hear a high and a low from your career so far. It could be card counting or, hole carding or whatever, but what sticks out to you?
Man, I would say a high point was I was playing a particular game and I won like almost $40,000 on a single hand.
I remember this.
Yeah.
a jackpot or something. You don't have to give the details.
Yeah, I can't give the details, but essentially on a single hand of a game. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. That is pretty cool.
And that was only betting like $250. So
wow. I think I had a $40,000 shoe.
Nice.
Somewhere close to that, but never a hand.
Yeah.
I don't think I've had a hand even, half that, but that must have been quite the moment.
It does not happen very often.
Yeah.
But those are never a dull moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And unless you're betting $100,000 hands, then $40,000 hands are a dull moment.
Yeah, that's just a surrender,
Yeah. So what about a low?
Yeah, man, losing just never gets fun.
Yeah.
I've had, I can't really remember like my biggest losing streak, but of course with the stuff that I do, what almost hurts just as much is just long periods of underperformance, and just like getting a ton of EV in and just making some pittance of percentage and actual value.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say those are my lows. Lows for me are also just playing by myself. Like I don't like the solo grind of, going out there, and just playing until I get kicked out, that was a lot of the reason why I like being on teams is just because it's just the isolation is really rough on me. I know my personality kind of needs to have, other people at least like invested with me or something so that it feels like I'm not just going out there and grinding it out on the road by myself. So
that's interesting. I think that'll be helpful for people to hear. So I have a question if you're willing to answer it.
Okay.
What's your fascination with bad parking jobs?
So I think what you're referring to is a series of Facebook posts by myself. So I just started noticing it. I don't know. I don't actually go out in parking lots and like seek out people who have parked horribly.
But you've got a keen eye for it.
Yeah, but they find me.
Yeah. What are a couple of your favorite?
Oh man,
up on the curb or taking 4 spots.
Yeah, some of my favorites are when there's like 2 cars next to each other that have parked horribly in a completely different way. There was one that was
just team play.
Yeah, and what's even better is when it's like obviously this person parked wrong because like they pulled up onto the curb or something because it was like a full lot during the day or whatever. But now it's like the middle of the night and there's like no cars in the lot except this one parked on the sidewalk.
Oh, that's fun.
Those are fun. There's this one particular casino that is like notorious for having like several trucks, like large trucks, just parked on the lawns. Like,
oh man,
like just
I can't believe they don't get towed or tickets.
Nope.
Well, gosh,
and it's not for lack of spaces. They just didn't want to park way out.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You don't want to have to walk, and that's why they bought that truck so they could just pull right over that.
Right.
Over
the
that
grass
curb
means truck parking.
Yeah, apparently. So what's your goal for the next 5 to 10 years? Well, when I pulled up this first email from you from, after you'd seen Holy Rollers, you actually mentioned real estate then.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know that it's always been a goal, and it sounds like Advantage Play is helping you in that direction.
Yeah. That was kind of, it's been a dream for a long time of just to become more of a real estate investor. And yeah, Advantage Play was kind of part of my plan for like just leaving a day job and just being able to take my time back. And it has. And yeah, I've made some good money investing in real estate, and I think long term that's probably where I'm going to be at.
Yeah, especially now you're having kids. I mean, when you got started, you were newlywed, no kids.
Right.
And a little harder being on the road.
Yeah,
when you got young kids. I know that's been the case for myself.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's a natural transition from one small business of card carrying and Advantage Play to another small business? Or
I mean, and I don't necessarily think of it as like a transition necessarily. Like the AP life chooses you.
Yeah, totally.
So like I'll still have Advantage Play in my blood when I die.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been nice. I've recently started doing more like flip house investing and that kind of thing. In fact, I'm like covered in sawdust, fire caulking in my beard, and all kinds of stuff because I just came from the job site. So yeah, I've done started to do that more actively, and thanks to Advantage Play with a little more cash than when I started out and when you got that first email.
No, that's awesome to me. I mean, I just love seeing people being able to have a little bit more control over how they create value in the world, whether it's taking it out of casinos or whether it's And I enjoy real estate, so I always enjoy talking to you about that stuff and hearing what you're learning. Getting back to casino life, what's one of the weirdest things you've ever seen at a casino?
Oh man. I don't know if this is like G-rated enough, but like
we'll put the little E on the.
Okay. We'll just bleep this whole section out if it's too bad. But the weirdest thing, and like here, I'll say this with a grain of salt because I've seen so much weird stuff in a casino that most of it actually doesn't faze me anymore.
Yeah,
and I have to be like telling a kind of funny story to somebody, and then them react of like that's crazy.
Yeah.
To even know that it's that it's weird. But I can remember one time I went to a casino and I'm going into the men's room and there's this very large man in like a mechanical wheelchair or whatever, and he's got a cigarette hanging out of his mouth with about an inch of ash on it. And I can see him like wheeling his chair and like maneuvering himself in front of a urinal so that he can sit on the edge of his wheelchair and just use a urinal with an inch of like cigarette that's about to fall down in ash like on his like large oversized belly. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Like why does someone in a wheelchair use the urinal? But I don't know. I've seen so much weird stuff since then. It's just like, yep, that's just the casino.
Man, I don't think we'll need to bleep that out. And we won't need to bleep this out either, but I do remember tripping over an oxygen tank at a table and finding out that the lady claimed she only had like a couple weeks to live, and I'm like, and you're in the casino?
Wow.
That was like a low.
Another one of those like surreal moments is it's the craziest thing when like somebody in the casino like collapses onto the floor, like obviously for some medical reason.
Yeah.
And everyone keeps playing.
Oh my gosh.
It's just weird, but it happens so often. Like, the medics will get that, it's just like they just treat it like dime a dozen, like, oh, another one bites the dust.
Man.
Like that's the weirdest stuff that, you just kind of walk by and you're not surprised anymore, but it's just ugh.
I'll bet someone that has actually worked in a casino, they've got some real story, because we've spent a couple thousand hours, and some of these people that
day in, day out.
Yeah, man, I kind of want to know, and I kind of don't want to know what their crazy stories would be. Okay, so I'd like to hear something that you've learned from your career as an AP that applies outside of casinos. But I feel like, I love this quote. There's a quote by Ed Thorpe where he says that the blackjack table is a great tool for investing because, he learned all these things from the blackjack table. And I feel like the same thing, but I'd like to hear from you.
Oh, yeah. I think, where do you begin with that? Like, you go into card counting thinking, like, oh, I'm going to play a game for fun that makes me billions of dollars, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, this is work. And, that journey towards becoming a successful AP, when you do eventually become a successful AP, you look back and realize, like, oh, I learned bankroll management, which is like the same as personal finance. And I don't have a consistent income. So I have to be better than the average Joe at managing my money so that I don't run out, and so in realms of personal finance, it's been huge. In investing, definitely just starting to think more in terms of what your expected value of an investment is, and versus am I going to make money on this deal? It can kind of take a lot of the pressure out of choosing the right thing to invest in when it's more about just making good bets.
Yep. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently, when we think in terms of EV, sometimes it doesn't work, but it was still the right choice.
Right.
And in real world, something doesn't work, and you're like, oh, that must have been a mistake. But it could have absolutely been a really good idea. Right. But it's only going to work 6 times out of 10. Right. And you happen to get one of the times it doesn't work. But to have kind of that emotional and mental fortitude. Yeah. To next time around, think in terms of EV, not in terms of, fear of failure or whatever, and make that same, bet, so to speak. Right.
Well, and in the real estate stuff that I'm doing now, it's I'm a little bit spoiled because in real estate, the property is it's never worth zero. There actually isn't a total risk of ruin in the same sense that there is in blackjack. So
it would be if you leverage. Let's say you put down 10% and then the property drops.
Sure. There's ways to lose big. Yeah. I won't lie there, but there is, certain ways that it behaves that's a little bit less risky than card counting in a lot of ways. But at least that's my opinion on it. But.
My accountant was saying he was talking about you buy real estate wrong. You buy high. If it drops a little bit, you could lose all of it. If you're leveraging money to buy.
But even if you lose all your equity and then have to bring some money to the closing table, the property wasn't worth zero. You still got some of your bankroll out of it.
That's true.
But you're right. You can over leverage to a point where you don't. But I suppose blackjack has also taught me, how much risk is too much, or
Absolutely. Any closing thing you'd like to add?
No, just practice.
Yeah. So 6 years ago, you stumbled across Holy Rollers. Mm-hmm. Are you glad you did?
Absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that. I was assuming you were going to say that, but I didn't know.
Life-changing.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine you might see that and all you think of are the pros. Mm-hmm. And life is full of ups and downs, but I'm glad to hear, the consensus is that it's been worth getting into.
It has definitely beat the 9 to 5, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, on that note, we're going to end. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah.
And you guys can check out the other, the roundtable discussions that JCnote was a part of. And if you want to find out more about beating blackjack with card counting, and JCnote is a big part of our forum. He's helped with other areas of Blackjack Apprenticeship for a number of years. If you want to get involved there, check out our membership, and hopefully you can meet JCnote and I at a boot camp someday.
Yeah.
Otherwise, hopefully this has been valuable to you guys. Thanks a lot.